Hello, everybody, and welcome to our pilot episode of the Music Connoisseurs. My name is Bill Marshall.
I'm Paul Marshall, and I am the son of said partner.
So we decided to do this podcast because I've had a love of music for many, many years, and that ended up getting passed on to him. So my son also has a great love of many different kinds of music. So we thought, wouldn't it be fun to share this love of music? So what we plan on doing in these future episodes is every time we do an episode, we will pick a singer or a band, or maybe like a decade, or like a theme
genre,
and just talk about those things, share our knowledge and just our love of music. And we have several different platforms that I will give you links to at the end of this. We have a Facebook page called the Music Connoisseurs Podcast. We also have a web page for said same name. And I guess to start out in our pilot episode, we want to just talk about what our personal favorites are, the different genres, different maybe specific acts, and just kind of go through that. So I suppose we'd start with me, seeing as I'm the older one.
Senior.
It's funny, my love of music began in my early teens, oddly enough, because of a girl. I was about 14, and I had a friend from school over, and there was this girl I liked. And, when you have a friend or two over, you end up calling somebody that you like, and blah. So I got this girl on the phone, we were talking, and, I was just, not very experienced. I was just talking about stupid kid stuff or whatever. Well, my friend gets on the phone and starts talking to her. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm into Rush." I'm the whole time I'm thinking to myself, wow, they're connecting on this level with music that I don't know anything about yet.
Yeah.
So I immediately thought that's what I need to do is, start getting into this music. So I've got, something cooler to talk about than whatever it was I was talking about.
Right.
Started buying a few records and ended up falling in love with the music. I don't even remember who the girl was. It doesn't matter. But yeah, it started with buying a couple records because of, my friends said, "Oh man, you got to get this one and that one." And yeah, it just kind of went from there. And I started listening to it and just fell in love with it.
Yeah, I think, I was raised in a house that you built that was based on music very young. I mean, I remember listening to like Little Richard, the Beatles, the Doors, Genesis, Marillion. You go back, and I think that I remember specifically just days, Saturday mornings, when we were living in the little house behind Nana's house. There were just mornings and afternoons where music would be just blasting through the stereo. Nothing else would be going on, and we would just have music blasting.
Mm-hmm.
I have this vivid memory of listening to American Life in the summertime, and it just being
Francis Gunner.
Yeah, just like blasting through the house, and
mm-hmm.
There was no perfect moment than that sometimes, and the music was just such a vital part, because as I grew up, I started out with whatever you liked, I adapted to, and then as time went on, I began to find myself branching out, and there were certain instruments that I liked, certain sounds that I liked, and then it just kind of piqued my interest where, now it's not just, 70s, 80s, 90s, now it's, country, it's Euro house music from, from over in England and Germany. I mean, I listen to all these kinds of genres, and I credit that to you very, very young, putting on, like Boris the Spider by the Beatles being played or the Who. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
sorry
who's
for
who?
the Who. I got it mixed up. You know, stuff like that being put on so early that it never left me, and even to this day, I find myself trying to discover new music. So that's kind of where I think the birth of this came from.
Mhm.
Was I think both of us wanted to continue to search and learn and find out more about the music that we love, because you can play the hits and the hits are great. The hits are full of nostalgia and they're never going to go anywhere, but there's something about finding something new and calling it yours for the
Some,
first time.
or something deeper,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
deep cut off an album.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's just really neat because I get to rediscover stuff that to me is new, but it's from 40 years ago.
Hmm.
Listening to certain Frank Sinatra songs for the first time and falling in love with the song,
Hmm.
but it's from a time that I'll never know or never feel. But I'm connected to it in such a way, which is why I believe that this, what we're doing here takes a millennial like me, takes a Gen Xer like you, bridges the gap to the new generations and the old, and say, all this music comes from, because there's all this fantastic music from all these generations, even going back to the 30s, the 40s, and the
Hmm.
50s. I'm sure you would find something in there where you can actually listen to it and say, holy cow, that right there was the beginning of what swing was.
Hmm.
And then swing was the beginning of what disco was. And I'm not saying this is a literal adaptation, but you look at that and
As a family tree of music.
yeah. And to me it's really cool, like going back and watching how rock and roll started, but it came from the blues.
Hmm.
And then watching where the blues came from. So I mean, a lot of that stuff, me personally, music is not just something that I enjoy. It's a part of me. It really is.
Yeah.
There are songs that define me. You hear people joke around and say, "There's a soundtrack for my funeral." Where people say like, "I want these songs played," but I truly have sat and said that if I had to figure out the soundtrack to my life that leads up to my funeral, I know what songs I want to
Hmm.
be played here, there, and there. And one of the things that I think we share, and I want you to speak to this a little bit. I can feel music,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Like, and
It
I don't mean just like, oh, I can hear the, I'm not talking about that. I mean, like,
you feel it in your soul.
like there's something about when that person sings that song, or
Hmm.
that specific note is hit, or that instrument is played in such a way, you relate to it with a feeling, and there's more to it. So I don't know if you want to.
I have a,
It,
I have a perfect example of that.
yeah.
Um, the song Changes by Yes.
Hmm.
And there's a part about the middle of the song, and it's literally one note, but it so resonates with me because it says, um, well, the line before it is, "There's no way to change it now." And then there's this really deep, but I just find that so cool because it's just like, it's almost like if the sound takes you by surprise and it just sounds so cool to me.
And it's amazing. Like, even going back to, I discovered Queen when you would play it.
Hmm.
And you would play different songs, and Freddie Mercury would sing, and and I liked those songs, but it wasn't until my late 20s when I rediscovered it per se, and to hear all the experimental things they did in their music.
Hmm.
Like you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody,
Hmm.
name a song that was anything like Bohemian Rhapsody
No.
prior to that. And it came back. A lot of people don't know, but it came back, and the Queen was kind of out of the picture by the 90s
Hmm.
until Wayne's World came back,
Yeah.
or Wayne's World movie came out, and they put that song in there, and that's when it kind of expanded the way that it did, and just kind of, they got their popularity back. So, but that's kind of when I started to dig through Queen albums, but not just the hits, but going back into their really early stuff, and even some of
Freddie's
Freddie
voice
Mercury.
is so powerful.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I mean, there was no one like him before or since. And
I agree. Yeah.
I thought the movie was really good that they recently made, Bohemian Rhapsody, about his life. But yeah, he was an interesting person. He was a phenomenal singer. We lost a great singer when he died.
And it's weird too, because I find myself being emotional about things that happened so long ago. Like, it's weird. I guess I'll put it in this way. When I found out that Freddie died, because in my mind, I didn't know this, I didn't know anything about the band at the time, but I started digging into their music and then realized, like, man, I like this stuff, to only find out, like, okay, well, it stopped at a certain time, why it stopped, and it turns out Freddie died. But there was that genuine sadness of, like, wow, I'm not going to hear anything past this now.
Right.
I get to hear all the way up until this moment. And for some musicians and bands, when it stops, it's probably for the best, But then there are some that stop and it's like, what could have been,
Stevie Ray Vaughan
Yeah,
died way too young. Helicopter crash right here in Wisconsin.
right.
And then they put out that last album of songs he had recorded. Not really, I think they were just kind of like leftover songs. And that was the what could have been. The same thing with just before he died, they put out the Vaughan brothers, him and his brother Jimmy Vaughan, put out an album together. And I think their plan was to go forward as the Vaughan brothers. And again, a what could have been album. I mean, that was 30 years ago he died.
Right.
He died the year you were born.
Wow.
Think of all the great music we could have had these last 30 years.
Yeah, and the stuff that I heard of you listen to Texas Flood, Life by the Drop, just like amazing music, to then, you discover this stuff, and like I'm saying, you discover it and you're like, I want more, to only find out that's it.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing, and I think because I love music so much, I take it emotionally hard sometimes, where it's just like, man, I fell in love with this, and there's a stoppage to it. There's a point when you didn't want a point, So yeah.
I think the only person that we're ever going to get new music from that has passed away, and we'll get new music from for years and years and years, is Prince.
Or Tupac.
Or Tupac?
Tupac seems to put out a new record all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
But he's apparently alive with Elvis down in the Illuminati Hotel in Cuba.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, he recorded constantly. He had tape recordings going throughout his house constantly in case he got an idea and he didn't want to lose it. And to that end, he's got what they call his vault.
Yeah.
He said they've got enough music that they could release an album a year for like 100 years.
That's crazy.
From him, and it'll all be new music.
It's nuts. Another creator.
I saw Prince in concert, by the way. I know, so I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no.
I got to see Prince back, and I think it was '91 when the Symbol album came out.
What was that like?
Oh, it was an amazing show. We saw it was at the Chicago Theater, and I went with your Uncle Steve.
Yeah.
And the seats weren't bad. I mean, we were a little bit further back and up, but we could see the stage. And he was like just an average person. You expect Prince to be kind of out there, and he was at times, But when he was on stage, he was like talking to a few people up in the front, talking to the audience, and he just sounded like a regular guy.
Yeah.
And, just his guitar work was amazing. And he did 3 encores that night.
3 of them?
3 of them. And on the 3rd encore, I don't know if you know who Mavis Staples is, but she came out and did a couple songs with him at the end.
Yeah.
Which is just, mind-blowing. It was amazing.
That's crazy. Yeah. See, and that's another thing that I kind of felt like I got robbed of. Not necessarily robbed, but I don't get to experience concerts in the sense you think of all the greats. Like, there's music today, but there's nothing on the level of going to see a Prince,
Right.
or there's nothing on the level of going to see Led Zeppelin.
Hmm.
There's nothing on the level of going to see the Doors. Like, there's these certain bands that,
Hmm.
you know, and I know you weren't old enough to go see those last two in concert, but to be able to say like, oh, I went and I saw Prince,
Hmm.
or I went and I saw Pearl Jam, some of these bands that are just huge and massive. I'm not going to be able to ever go do that. Obviously COVID was,
Yeah.
this is before COVID even. Some of these bands either stopped making music, they're not here with us anymore. So, to go back, you see those posts on Facebook where it says like, if you could bring somebody back for one concert to go see, I don't think I could ever nail down one
Yeah.
band
Would be
or
different.
one person, because there's so many for different reasons. Like, if I could, like, obviously, and people will find out as time goes on, my favorite band and musician was, well, singer, I guess, would have been Jim Morrison.
Hmm.
Obviously he's not the most talented singer, but I fell in love with his poetry, and I fell in love with,
Well, and then let's go back and tell that story so people understand. It's like I was into the Doors when I was younger,
yeah,
and you started writing poetry when you were in what, middle school?
uh, right heading into ninth grade.
Okay.
So yeah, middle school, ninth grade transition.
And and then for those of you watching, he wrote some amazing poetry. And one day I said, have you ever heard of the Doors? And I think you said you did. And I said, did you know Jim Morrison was a poet? And you said, I didn't know that. So I said, let's watch the movie.
Yeah,
So we watched the movie The Doors with Val Kilmer. Which movie? And
yeah.
so you and I sat and we watched the movie, and I'll let you take the story from there.
So with there was, and at the time there was some pushback, because as a teenager I kind of wanted to do my own thing. So you were like, just give it a shot, watch the first half an hour, blah blah blah. And finally I was like, okay. And I think I remember watching the scene where he's walking on the beach, and Ray Manzarek comes up, or Jim Morrison walks up to Ray Manzarek when he's on the beach and he's meditating, and he starts talking to him about, dropping out of LA college or LA film school, and what he's gonna do. And Ray Manzarek says, well, what are you doing? He's like, well, I've been writing songs and poetry. He's like, you should let me hear it. And when he starts singing Moonlight Drive to Ray Manzarek,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ray Manzarek, I'll never forget it. He gave him this reaction of just like shock of
Yeah.
what came out of his mouth, and was just like, you wrote this? This is yours? He's like, yeah, I got like a whole concert in my head. And that moment of watching somebody listen to your stuff and be shocked by it was like, I wanted that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that moment too, where it was like somebody heard my stuff and had that same reaction. And then to continue to listen to his poetry and listen to the music, I kind of just felt the I felt connected to Morrison
Mm-hmm.
in different ways and different stages of my life as time went on. I felt he said a lot of things that a lot of people maybe didn't understand, but through poetic understanding, I understood what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the rest of the movie, you watch a guy go through, ups and downs, more downs than anything. But you just, the guy was just, he's brilliant. Like
Yeah.
he to me, and people may dispute this and may not understand, but the guy is a genius. The things that he says, um, when he says things like, we're you know, soldiers in a miniature dirt war. He says, you know, just these certain quotes, where he's fighting with Pamela and he says, "Give me death." Thing that he said, I connected to and resonated with, and I thought the guy was just a genius. And I've been a Doors fan ever since. I have a tattoo on my leg.
Yes.
It's the famous picture of him laying on the stage holding the microphone. And the quote that he said that I took with me wherever I went was, "If my poetry aims to achieve anything, it's to deliver people from the limited ways in which they see and feel." And to still feel like that to this day. Felt like that when I was 18 getting the tattoo, and it was, it's a big part of me, and
Mhm.
yeah, I've been a Doors fan ever since. So
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
so, okay, so that's a story of your love for the Doors, and I've always liked the Doors. Um, so we were talking about concerts.
Mm.
Some of the concerts I've been to over the years, I've been to some pretty good ones. I saw my very first concert ever, 1986, uh, Ozzy Osbourne, the Ultimate Sin Tour. That's back when Ozzy was still fat. And all I could do is go, "Let's have a riot!"
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing. And Metallica opened. And now
Dang, that
Metallica
must
had
have been
just
crazy.
released Master of Puppets, which was their
Okay.
big breakout on their really
Yeah,
big.
yeah, yeah.
And some people may remember, if you're from here in Milwaukee, we used to have what they called the Record Riot. And like 2 or 3 times a year at the State Fair Park in West Dallas, different record distributors would come and they would, give you really great deals on albums. And it was all, old stuff, current stuff, whatever, but they were new. It wasn't like used stuff. It was all new. And it was the day of the show, like around noon that day. And Metallica came to the Record Riot and they were signing autographs. And I went with my stepbrother. And nowadays you picture them, if like the band shows up, they get out of a limo or something, right?
Yeah.
They got out of a minivan and
Really?
they got out of a minivan. They kind of waved at everybody because we were standing in a line to get in there. And then we got inside and I can't remember the guy's name, but the one that died was still part of the band then.
Mm.
He and so I got to meet him, talk to him for like literally a minute. And my stepbrother had this leather vest and he had a silver Sharpie and all 4 guys had signed it. I'm
Oh,
sure that's got to be pretty valuable just to have those 4
this,
signatures.
yeah.
But yeah, so that's one of my little claims to fame. So I
Wow, that's
saw
pretty
Ozzy.
cool.
Actually, I saw Ozzy twice. I saw his tour after that too. It wasn't No More Tears. I can't remember the name of it right now.
But
I because I'm thinking too fast.
was the biting of the bat when he was solo, or is that when he was with Sabbath?
It was solo, but that was like early in his solo career. I think that was like 81, 80, 81,
Oh, okay.
like that. Yeah, that was way back.
Yeah.
This was 86. And then I saw him again in 87. No Rest for the Wicked. That was the other tour. No Rest for the Wicked.
Okay.
Let's see. Who else have I seen? I've seen Robert Plant twice, which both times that was amazing. I saw Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes. They performed together.
Yeah.
I saw Eric Clapton and Roger Daltrey from The Who actually opened for him. So that was a great show.
Wow.
I've seen Fleetwood Mac
Yeah.
with Squeeze. Aerosmith with Dokken. Aerosmith was, what year was that? 88? It was 88 that I saw Aerosmith. So they were just making their big comeback with their Permanent Vacation tour because prior to that, I think they were all like in rehab or something because they were all just, messed up and things
Yeah.
were just kind of going south. But they got clean and they came back, they recorded Permanent Vacation and they just blew it up all over again.
Wow.
And again, another one of those really great shows that's, you can say, I was there,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some other, I wouldn't say minor, but lesser ones. I've seen Pat Benatar. I've seen Joe Walsh. A couple you might laugh at. I've seen Gordon Lightfoot. I've seen.
I've heard. I don't know a lot about Gordon Lightfoot, but I've heard.
He's the guy that did Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The ship was the pride of the American side coming down
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Wisconsin. And what's another one? I saw Don Williams, country singer. who I found out he actually died a couple years ago. I was
Oh, okay.
surprised. Usually I hear about this stuff. That one got by me.
Yeah.
But and I actually saw that one with my father, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
But
there's a lot of concerts. Now, how many have you been to? You've been to a few, right? Well, I saw Meat. I forgot Meat. Saw Meatloaf.
you saw Meatloaf?
Yeah. Oh, and Rod
Oh,
Stewart too.
let's talk about Meatloaf for a second.
Sure.
I'm a fan. What year did you go to see Meatloaf?
94.
And what was that like?
It was great. There was no opening act. Here's the crazy thing. I think the show was almost 3 hours long, no intermission,
Wow.
and he only did like 7 songs. Because Meatloaf is really cool.
How's that possible?
Because if you, especially like his first couple albums where Jim Steinman wrote all his songs for him, or most of them at least. These are like 9-10 minute epic songs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big choir vocals in the background, and just, and I mean, like Paradise by the Dashboard Light, that's got to be,
It's at least an 8-minute song.
at least 8 to 10 minutes right in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, but those songs were just, I mean, the entire Bat Out of Hell album, that first album, was 100% gold start to finish. That thing was just a masterpiece.
That's one of the first albums that I remember putting on and not having to skip a song. And I've never done that before until I listened to that album. I listened to it from beginning all the way to the end. Didn't need to skip a song. Every song on that album was perfection, in my opinion, at least.
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, back in 85, 86-ish, I had the cassette of that album, and spent a lot of time over at my friend Mike Yeager's house. What you would call Uncle Mike. Me and a bunch of my friends, and we would literally play that tape over and over and over, and play pool in their basement because they had a regulation size pool table. And that's all we would do. We'd spend days and nights down there just playing pool and playing Bat Out of Hell over and over again. And a lot of great memories out of that.
And said you saw Rod Stewart,
which was another great show.
What was that?
We saw him that was also in 88. Saw a lot of concerts in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
It was his, wow, I usually don't blank on names like this. But whatever album that came out at that time, he had no opening act. And again, I think he did like 3 to 3.5 hours because he took an intermission for like 20 minutes. But the show started late. The show started 45 minutes late, and everybody was kind of sitting around, getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But he came out and he just rocked the house.
Right.
I can remember there was one part, because he did a couple outfit changes. And one time he came out, shirt, black pants, and he was walking around the stage and he's singing, he's moving around, and you start to notice on the inseam of his pants, it started to open up. And by the time he realized that it was like ripped open from like just above the knee, all the way down to the ankle. And you could see the moment when he looked down, realized his pants were ripped. He quick finished the song and darted out to get a change of pants.
Right.
But yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a great show. I really had a lot of fun at that one.
I think when we get some time, we'll do a concert episode.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
And kind of talk about some of the concerts, like the top 10 concerts or something that we've seen video, and then we'll go into a little more depth of your concert experience. And then I would like to actually get you to rate the concerts that you've been to, best to least, as far as what you feel to you has been like, hey, this is the one I would want to relive. This one, I was there, whatever, no big deal. I think that'd be fun.
One act that I was, to this day, I'm so glad I got to see, the Ramones.
The Ramones.
I
Yeah.
got to see the Ramones. That was pretty cool because they started dying off a couple years after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that was a great time too, seeing the Ramones. I still
So
love the music. Yeah, go ahead.
let's transition a little bit.
Okay.
One of the the rest of the episode, and just for everyone that now you can kind of have an idea of who we are, what we're doing, what we're gonna be doing. But the rest of this episode now, until we call it a night, um, is gonna be a tribute to Eddie Van Halen.
Yes. Sad loss in the music world.
You know, I was a I'm a I like Van Halen a lot. I like the David Lee Roth years, obviously. You know, I wasn't a big fan of the Sammy Hagar stuff. But
It took
um,
me a while to get on board with the Hagar stuff, but I'm okay with it now. I like
yeah,
Hagar.
I mean, I think if you were to do a poll and ask people, are you which Van Halen do you want to listen to more if you had the choice? Would you want David Lee Roth or would you want Sammy Hagar? I don't see that poll being a close one. I
Yeah,
would just assume a lot of people would pick the David Lee Roth years with good reason. When you listen to songs like Panama or Running with the Devil, just can't see Sammy Hagar
yeah,
doing what David Lee Roth does
yeah. It was
best.
two different animals, totally.
Yeah, I mean I Can't Drive 55.
Well,
You know,
that was Hagar's solo.
what I'm saying, like I can't picture that guy singing
Oh yeah,
a Van Halen song. It's just so like to me, it's like polar opposites.
yeah.
That's just me though. But he passed away from cancer. He's been for the last 10 years traveling back and forth to Germany, I believe,
Hmm.
to get cancer treatments. Was not he had a bout of cancer before that too.
Hmm.
I believe he had mouth cancer or tongue
Tongue
cancer.
cancer. He had a third of his tongue removed.
Yep. And then after that, was doing good, and then turned out that he had I don't know if it was mouth or throat cancer.
Throat cancer.
Throat cancer. Yeah, so he had throat cancer, and then his son Wolfgang, about 5 6 days ago, put a post on Twitter, Instagram, just saying, this. I can't believe I'm writing this post, but unfortunately, my dad has passed away, and it was. I don't know. I don't know what it was like to be a kid or a teenager during the Van Halen's height or popularity, but why don't you speak to what did Van Halen mean to you?
Well, the really early stuff, the late '70s. I heard the music, but that was like pre trying to impress the girl
Right.
years. So I knew their music. Um, but once I started exploring and digging into the Van Halen stuff, um, man, that 1984 album, that Panama, Jumped, Hot for Teacher. I mean, I think that had to have been one of the biggest albums of the year. It's just huge. And no matter where you went, you heard Van Halen play.
Yeah,
You know, and it's
I would
just pouring
imagine.
out of everybody's car and bedroom window, you name it.
I mean, for me, and I don't mean to break in, but I'll tell you real quick. The first time I've heard you play Van Halen in the house before,
In
obviously, as we talked about that. But the way I got there it is. Oh, that
1984,
looks like a mint cover pop.
it's still in the original plastic.
Really?
Yeah.
You know how much that might be now?
Well,
That might be worth a lot now.
see,
I
here it is in
wow,
mint condition.
that's crazy. Yeah, I got rediscovered to Van Halen because I was watching Little Nicky, believe it or not.
Oh, geez.
And it was the beginning song. It they go through the movie and they're in hell or whatever, and then all of a sudden you see Adam Sandler being Little Nicky. He's got this giant like broom or something, and he starts doing a bum 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 bow, bum, bum, bum,
Yep.
bum, 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 play it, and you can play it right here a little bit while.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll stick that in the background. Everybody
But
hear it? Can you hear it?
yeah.
Yep. There it is. Okay.
But I remember, they only played like, a couple minutes of the beginning of the song, but I remember thinking like, man, I want to listen to that again. And when I went back, and then like I probably had to be an early teenager, 13, 14,
hmm
figuring out that that was Van Halen, and then going back and then just exploring, like, man, this band had that album was, I don't know if that was that on that album, Running with the Devil, or is that on the other album?
That was on their first album. Let me confirm that here. Pretty sure that was on their first one. Yep. Van Halen
Yeah.
1. Run Out.
So I found Van Halen 1 after that movie, because I looked up and I listened to that record, and then that's what led me into, all the other ones. But I can't imagine, I guess, when you found out. Oh, let's change this to interviewing you a little bit about Van Halen. So, do you remember what your first Van Halen song that you listened to?
It was probably Running with the Devil
Okay.
because it's one of the earliest hits.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could almost guarantee that's probably one of the very first songs I ever heard by him.
Do you think you would have considered that hard rock at the time?
Yes.
Like, would you say that that's on a level? Because when people say hard rock, my generation today considers hard rock almost like screamo music,
Yeah.
like a death metal.
Yeah.
Pretty much, pretty much.
I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm too old for that.
Pretty much, when you look at what I'm saying, and then you look at what Van Halen was back in late 70s, early 80s, were they looked at as like, man, this is hardcore
Yeah.
stuff? Were they?
Yeah. Yeah. In the 70s, bands that today we consider just rock.
Yeah.
Look at Van Halen as rock. AC/DC is rock.
Right.
But late 70s, early 80s, that was hard rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. It tamed down when, stuff like even Metallica started coming around and
Sure.
stuff like that. Because even like Black Sabbath, you look back at the early Sabbath stuff now, the Ozzy years, and that was is pretty tame these days compared to stuff that's out there now.
But I'm sure if you go back in time and especially late 70s, early 80s, I'm sure a lot of people would have looked at that record and would just assume like this is, scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just like me, when I heard it the first time, I never considered any of that to be hard rock.
Well, think about
Because
this. In the 50s, they thought Elvis was,
you're right.
the Antichrist, And I mean, you look at Elvis, it's like, that's just oldies now.
Yeah, and
Great
that's
stuff, by the way. I'm a huge Elvis fan, but
right, and that's what I find crazy is, and I kind of figured that Van Halen probably was looked at like that.
mm-hmm.
Do you think there was a transition from their first album to any of their other albums where they became softer or more? Were they ever considered a hair band? How about that?
I don't think they were honestly ever really considered a hair band. I mean, even though they all had the hair, so
Sure.
at that time. No, I think they're still considered hard rock during the David Lee Roth years.
Okay. To you, what was their best album that they ever made, and why?
With my personality type, it's always a challenge to try and pick just one. I think commercially, as far as the amount of hits it had, I think 1984 was pretty great. I love Diver Down because Diver Down has my favorite Van Halen song on it, Little Guitars, which I just love that song. I absolutely love that song. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
No, you did. You did.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. The reason why I ask is because, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. There's commercial,
Hmm.
and then there's personal.
Right.
Because like a lot of people will say, well, commercially, Prince's best album probably would have been, the Purple Rain album,
Or 1989.
commercial,
People love 1999 too.
right. So, and then other people may say, whatever album, Little Red Corvette on was their
That was
personal.
1999. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I mean? Like everybody's different.
Yeah.
For me, I would probably say 1984
Hmm.
would be, because there's just, as much as I like, as I love the song Running with the Devil,
Hmm.
you can't deny all the other hits that are on that album. I
1984.
mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you found out that David Lee Roth was going solo, what did you think about him going solo, and what did you feel going forward for Van Halen that meant?
Well, when he first went solo, I thought, well, maybe it was just a side project. Maybe, because a lot of bands will do that. The lead singer will say, I want to go and do just my thing. Nobody else's input. I just want to do my album. Phil Collins did it.
Right.
When he put out Face Value. A lot of other artists. And I really like the stuff he put out. His first thing he put out was an EP. I think there were just 4 songs on there. And it wasn't until maybe a year or so after that I really realized it's like, he ain't going back. And next thing I know, I hear an announcement, Sammy Hagar's taken over.
Right.
And just being such a hardcore Roth fan with Van Halen, it took me a while to accept Sammy Hagar in that role. Yeah. And I think it did change their music to some degree. I think their style, because, a group of people that play together will have their own certain style, but if you make a change to that mix, change a singer, change a guitar player, whatever it is in a band,
right,
it's gonna change the feel and the style at least a little bit.
Sure.
And I think they really went with more keyboards. They started in the 1984 album, but I think when they did 5150, which was the next album, it really sounded like they were going with a lot more synthesizer keyboard sounds. I mean, Eddie still, shredded, was great as always, but yeah, there was a different feel. But Hagar and Roth have 2 totally different voices.
Yeah.
Whereas you can look at some bands like Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Collins and Peter Gabriel, yeah, they have different voices, but they still kind of are on that same wavelength. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Roth and Hagar are just 2 totally separate.
It's almost like for me, because I don't know a lot of Hagar stuff. I like a lot of David Lee Roth solo stuff, and this is obviously a show about Eddie Van Halen, but for me, for me, it's like eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and instead of jelly, you put pepperoni on it. It's just such a weird combination.
It changes everything, yeah.
It's just I don't know, but Eddie Van Halen, where does he rank top guitar players of all time?
Top guitar players of all time? Top 5 for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe even top 3. Because and let's talk about something else for a second real quick too, is he perfected that guitar style where he taps on the strings.
Yeah.
But there's a connection to the band Genesis in that.
Okay.
Because Steve Hackett is recognized and credited with inventing that style.
Really?
Yeah, Steve Hackett. He played with them in the 70s, but by the 80s he had gone off on his own. But he's the one that started that. And Eddie Van Halen even himself said, yeah, I knew that Steve Hackett did the finger tapping thing, so I tried it. Well, Van Halen was one that perfected it.
Yeah.
And a lot of other guitar players over the years have copied that, but I think Eddie took it and really made it his own, even to this day.
So if Eddie's in the top three, who's your other two?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
You think Slash is up there?
Slash is good. I would put him in the top 10 maybe.
Okay.
Jimmy Page would definitely be up there.
Jimmy Page has got to be in the top three.
And Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. I think if you did a top three and you said Hendrix, Page, and Halen, I think you'd have a hard time finding someone to disagree with that.
Hmm.
Because that's probably those three are definitely in the top five. I
Yeah.
don't think you can find anybody else.
Well, you know what? Prince though. Prince was also
Yeah,
killer on the guitar.
but do you think Prince did a lot? And I'm asking, I'm not saying, do you think Prince did a lot of solo rifting in his music to be in that top echelon group?
I think he saved a lot of it for his live performances.
Okay.
There, if and anybody listening or watching this podcast, if you ever get a chance, look up his performance at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I can't remember the exact year, but I mean, they say it was probably one of his best performances ever. And he was performing with a lot of other artists up on that stage, but they said that he just stole the show.
Yeah.
And um, your mom, my wife, and I went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 3 years ago,
Hmm.
4 years ago. And there's actually on the upper level, there's a theater, small theater, movie screen. And they have a montage, I think it's like a half hour long. And it's all these great performances from um, past rock and roll inductions and the live performances and stuff. And they only played bits and pieces, but for the Prince segment, they played the whole thing, and it was just mesmerizing.
Yeah.
Sit there and just it's like, wow. And then as you exit in the hallway, the suit he was wearing that night is behind glass in the hallway.
Now we're gonna kind of just talk a little bit about Eddie Van Halen himself. Guy was an innovator. I think clearly we kind of stated that before. Guy was just larger than life.
Mhm.
When he held that guitar. Do you remember what his first guitar's name was?
I do not.
Frankenstein.
Yes, that's right.
Named
Yeah.
it Frankenstein because he took all these different parts from different guitars that he felt most comfortable with
Hmm.
and put them together. And I believe they actually have the original in the Smithsonian.
Wow.
If it's not the original, it is like
Like a replica.
a replica in
Yeah.
the Smithsonian. But yeah,
Let me
that
throw
was
out a
one.
couple of quick facts that I wrote down,
Yeah.
just so I would remember. He was born in Amsterdam in 1955.
Mhm.
His family immigrated to the U.S. in 1962. He credits his influences as Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page. Van Halen was formed in 1972, but under a different name, and I didn't see what that name was, but it became Van Halen in 74.
It was actually I have it right here. It was the Broken Combs.
Okay. Yeah,
Was
I
their
did not see
first
that. I'm
name.
glad you caught that. They had 19 number one hits on the rock charts, but only one hit on the pop charts, and that was Jump. He's worked with Michael Jackson, Black Sabbath, even LL Cool J.
Yeah.
Um, he met Valerie Bertinelli in 1980, married her in 81, had their son Wolfgang in 82, and then divorced in 2007. He got remarried again in 2009, and Valerie Bertinelli was actually at that wedding. So they must have parted amicably.
Yeah, I think from what I heard, they actually stayed good
Yeah.
friends. Especially for their son Wolfgang.
Yeah. He had a hip replacement in 1999. He's been sober since 2008.
Mhm.
And then, as we discussed, he had tongue cancer in 2000. In 2002, they took a third of his tongue. And he was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2014. So
Yeah.
Those are just some little tidbits and facts. You got anything else?
Yeah, no, one of the things I found interesting, and I know Gene Simmons released a little tribute video on YouTube
Oh, did he?
talking about Eddie Van Halen. But Gene Simmons actually produced the band's first demo tape.
Okay.
He was one of the first guys to see Van Halen and say, there's something here,
Hmm.
and I thought that was pretty cool. Their 1984 album went 5 times platinum after only 1 year of its release.
I can believe that. That album was huge that year.
Yeah, so that was pretty big. What else? Some other. Let's see. Sammy Hagar wanted to name the 9th studio album the F word.
And it became For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge.
Yep.
F-U-C. So he kind of did it.
So do you remember the song Pound Cake?
Yes.
The intro to that song, how it sounded?
I would have to play it again to remember, but I know as soon as I hear it, I'll be like, oh, yeah, that.
Apparently, Eddie held a power drill to the guitar to get that sound.
No way.
So when you listen to that sound the next time, it's actually a power drill that you're hearing going into the guitar, and that's how they got that sound.
Wow.
That's pretty cool. And I think you said it already, Jump was their only #1 hit. For a band that created tons of great music,
right.
to Jump only being their #1 hit, I thought was pretty interesting.
But that's on the pop charts. They had 19 number ones on the rock charts.
Oh, okay. So, you're right. It does say that right here.
Yeah.
You're right.
And when I first saw their only #1 hit, I'm like, that can't be right. And then I saw, okay, pop, rock.
Yeah.
All together.
It also says that Eddie Van Halen is an inventor on 3 U.S. patents.
I saw that.
Yep. Looks like a supporting board for an attachment for a back of the guitar. Finger tapping technique, utensils, stuff like that. So it looks like there's a lot of things to do with the guitar, but he's an inventor for 3 U.S. patents. So, I mean, a guy lived an accomplished life. Did massive things to the music industry, the rock industry. Looked like a family man, loved his son.
Mm-hmm.
The guy, he brought his son into the band, I think, at like 2000 and something.
Yeah.
He brought his son in, and his son was actually the main bass player for a while with the band. Do you know?
Michael Anthony. I know.
Yes.
They kicked him out of the band, or if he just left the band.
I didn't read it. I don't know the story, but something did happen there. Yeah. Something did happen there.
They've had a history going all the way back to the Roth years of having, ins and outs with, they broke with Sammy Hagar.
So let's touch a little bit on this before we get ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
What do you know about the turmoil in Van Halen? Because a lot of people like controversy. Controversy creates cash. Mm-hmm. What happened to Van Halen, and where did the turmoil come from that you know of?
All I can really speak for sure is that when you get a band that's that popular, that big, you're going to have equally big egos. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably what happened both with Roth and Hagar.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't doubt it was also with Michael Anthony too.
Yeah.
Now, their final album came out in 2012. Mm-hmm. And Roth was actually the vocalist on that album. So they did do a reunion. So I think over the years, there was, friendships that, egos got in the way. People went different ways, came back, made up, fought again, the whole thing. I think that you see that in a lot of the really big bands.
Yeah.
So all I can really speak for sure is, it would be ego among them.
So when we're talking about top bands of all time? I know it's kind of hard when you look at the general scope of what that means.
Hmm.
Where do you think Van Halen sits in greatest of all time?
You're talking worldwide or my mind?
Well, how about we'll play this. Let's have a little fun with this.
Okay.
Let's do it this way.
Okay.
Let's start out with saying in the rock world, just rock.
In the rock world, oh,
Where do they sit?
I would say they would definitely be in the top 10.
Top 10?
Yeah.
Wow. So we're saying that in the entire rock universe, Van Halen definitely makes into the top 10.
You know what? I'm going to give myself a cushion. I'm going to say top 20
Okay.
because you're catching me off the cuff and I haven't had a chance to like sit and really like ponder it out.
Sure.
You know, because
No, I
we gotta
wasn't.
talk about the Beatles and Elvis, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, you have to take into account when you look at the rock and roll scope of everything. I mean, you're putting them up against, like you said, you're looking at the Beatles, you're looking at Elvis Presley, you're looking at Prince, you're looking at all these people. So Van Halen, when you think about the general scope of everything, you for sure believe they're a top 20 contender.
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Yeah. And if you narrow it down to hard rock,
yeah,
then I would probably throw my hat in the ring for top 10.
Okay, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
So I directed a lot of the questions towards you, how you felt and what it meant to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are going to be topics that we're going to kind of put out in the general scope, and I'm going to tell you, okay, it's your turn to pick one of mine,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're going to have to do your research, and then you're going to have to ask me these questions too. So this will kind of be a way where you get to learn, because you may not like certain music, you may not be able to stand it based on what it is.
But I can respect it.
Right. And you can give yourself the opportunity to say, you know what, at least I got to know a band's history. Even if it never meant anything,
Right.
you got to learn something. Because there are going to be times where you're like, you know, I'm going to have you go into a Euro house 90s band and you're going to be like, you know, this music isn't for me, but the story behind it's pretty
Right.
interesting.
Because there's always a story. There's always a story. And,
So,
and you touched on something I want to say real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
A point I always try to make with people, you know, if I'm talking to somebody and let's say I mention the Rolling Stones, just out there example. I'm like, yeah, man, I really like this Rolling Stones song. And then that person says, oh man, the Rolling Stones suck. They don't have any good music. Okay, wait. Now, you may not like it.
Right.
But again, it goes to that, you got to respect it.
Yeah.
I mean, they've sold millions and millions and millions of albums. People, you know, love their music all over the place.
100%.
So for me personally, the example I use, of all people, Whitney Houston.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's a great example. I'm not into her music. I'm not interested in her music. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
Because she had an amazing singing voice. She had an amazing career.
Right.
And, you know, she sold lots and lots and lots of albums.
And you cannot deny the accomplishments that were made.
She absolutely had amazing talent.
Yeah.
It just wasn't in my wheelhouse of interest.
Sure.
So
I agree. And there are certain, you know, and I have that. I'm sure there are things that you really like that I'll sit back and I say it's not for me, but I will always respect it. And I think when it comes to music, you have to respect it.
Right.
You know, you don't have to like it. You don't have to enjoy it. You don't have to sit and listen to it, but you have to respect it because it's freedom of expression. There's meaning behind it to somebody. And, you know, to completely sit back and be like, oh, this stuff sucks. And, you know, it's not just a disrespect to the person. It's disrespect to music as a whole, at least to me.
Music has to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to, just because you just don't like it doesn't mean that it's not going to stir up something in me, a feeling or a thought or a memory. And,
Right.
and you know, I'd love it for that, you know. Um, so that's what I want to instill that on my grandchildren, your
Yeah.
kids,
Mhm.
my other son's kids, Colin's kids, as they grow up, just like I did with you guys, to really appreciate
Mhm.
the music that's out there and the styles that's out there.
You know, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because one of the things that we do right now, you know, I raised my kids already. I have a 3-year-old daughter, 1-year-old son. You know, we listen to the Temptations.
Nice.
You know, we listen to sometimes I'll put on you know, a lot of they listen to a lot of 90s with me. You know, they listen to a lot of songs that were popular, you know, late 80s. You know, they've listened to Phil Collins, they listen to Peter Gabriel, they've listened to a lot of this music that I grew up listening to, because I want to show them the same thing. And I guess here's the thing that I have a problem with today. I'm not going to say that music sucks today, because it's too strong and too general of of a statement. But the music today, I don't feel captures what it used to do. At least even from 10 years ago. There's I just don't see or hear anything that I'm like, man, now that is a classic that I'm listening to in the making.
We're due for another music renaissance, for sure.
Yeah, and I hope it's soon, because I want to be able to watch my kids grow up and say like, Dad, you know, look at this band. I want to learn from my kids the way you've learned from me. There's stuff that I've shown you
Yeah, that
that you ended up falling in love with, you know, and I want that same thing with my kids. It's gonna take time, but I think you're right. I think a musical renaissance needs at some point, you know, because it's been really hard to put on the radio, and 90% of it just doesn't appeal to me.
yeah. I had a rough time with some of the 90s music, but I started to like more of it as time went on.
Yeah,
Um, the thing that really bugged me is for a while there, everything was about like the boy bands, you know, NSYNC, Backstreet
yeah,
Boys.
yep, that was big.
They were cookie cutter bands, and the same thing with the women. There was, you know, J Lo and
Hmm.
I don't know, you name a couple other ones, but
Sure. Yeah,
basically they were all the same. They were
yeah.
all singing the same style, the same stuff. You know, it's like the songs were almost just, you could have just ran them together and you would have realized it was one song.
There was no originality.
No. Okay, I can respect the part about the harmonies with the boy bands. Harmony is a good thing. You know, there's a lot of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They were known for their harmony parts.
Yeah,
Bands like that. But the music itself was just bland
yeah.
to me. Now there may be people out there that are disagreeing with me, and I fully support that disagreement. Again, I'm not saying it sucks. It's just not for me.
Yeah,
So,
and then and here's the cool thing about it. You're right. It's just not for you, and there are things that are just not for me. But one thing that I think this podcast is going to be based on is giving everybody a fair chance to be heard, you know, to listen to. And we'll take suggestions from people, you know, as this podcast grows. You know, I don't expect it to shoot up overnight, but if it does, great. But we want to start running polls about who you people, who the listeners want to hear us talk about. You know, because you know, this episode was a little bit different based on the fact that it's our first episode, and it was a more tribute episode to Eddie Van Halen. But you know, next week we have what was our topic for next week that
next
we
week is acoustic singer-songwriters.
okay, so next week you're going to hear us talk about acoustic singer songwriters from um you know,
Mostly the 70s and 80s, maybe a
yeah,
little 60s. We might touch on a few more modern ones.
sure,
That really
yeah.
classic era of acoustic singer-songwriters would be some 60s, definitely 70s and 80s.
And with that, you know, we're going to talk, each of us are going to kind of bring our top list of what we have, how we connect to it, what we enjoy about it. I like doing the ranking system.
Hmm.
Where do they rank? Personal, commercial, all those things. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And we want to hear from everybody else. Who do you want us to talk about? If there's an episode where someone's like, I would really like to hear about the Dave Matthews Band. I like a few things. I don't know if you know anything about the Dave Matthews Band.
I know a couple songs.
Right. But
You
then
know,
again, that gives us the opportunity to, okay, let's do some research. Let's get together and let's talk about it. And
mhm,
if it's not enough to cover a whole episode, then we'll take a few of these topics, put them together, and make an
mhm.
episode out of it.
And who
So
knows?
that's,
We may think we have nothing to talk about a certain topic and end up talking about it for an hour and a half.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
then those things happen.
it's going to
Um,
be a lot of fun.
yeah,
Why don't you talk a little bit about where we'll be on social media and then get ready to close us out?
sure. We have um, a Facebook page, which I just put together. It's just called the Music Connoisseurs Podcast. We also have started a website. That's not fully up and running yet, but when it is, I will give that that web address so that you guys can watch our shows there. And I am going to give you right now, in case you want to contact us, our email address, which is muconns@yahoo.com. So it's kind of a condensement of music connoisseurs. So it's Muconns.
Yeah, there you go.
Muconns. So we can be the Muconns, you and me. We're the Muconns. Yeah, so please shoot us an email. Tell us what you think. Hopefully you love it. Um, I'm having a fun time, and I think we're going to have a fun time with this in the future.
Yeah.
Because music is an endless subject. There's always something more to talk about. There's always another band, another artist, another genre, whatever. So I thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, I had a great time, Pop. And I think people have a lot to look forward to for us. I know for me, this is a great way to spend an hour and a half.
Mhm.
And I look forward to the next episode where we can get together. So find us on social media, hit us up, like our stuff, get involved with the show, leave comments, good or bad, whatever you guys want to say, we'll take it all. Help us make this podcast better because it's not just our music, it's all of your music too.
Music is for everybody.
So thank you guys. I really appreciate it. We look forward to hearing from you next time.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.